If you'd like, why
And
don't I kick things
I,
off and introduce our
I,
topic that we've decided on for today? And maybe you can take a look at some settings and make
yeah,
sure the
yep.
audio is set up properly for the podcast.
I turned the audio on. I had the audio off. I apologize to all of our listeners. Thank you to our Rumble chat group out there to give us a heads up. I slipped up this morning. I apologize. So all of that explanation to people about Rumble having a delay you missed, Facebook not having a delay you missed. We're streaming to YouTube this morning. Um, so if you we replaced YouTube or X with YouTube this morning for streaming live stream. So we are doing Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube this morning. And go ahead, Jonathan, and introduce what the program is going to be.
All right, so there's an alert follower of Voice of Geauga who sent me a very interesting video. I've not watched the whole thing yet, but I watched a major portion of it, or watched and listened early this morning as I was getting ready for this radio show. And that is an interview with G. Van Fleet. If you don't know the name, listening audience, I really suggest going and finding G. Van Fleet. You'll find her, that is a woman, all over social media. And she's been on podcasts and interviewed by all sorts of people. And effectively, it boils down to this. This was a Chinese woman who grew up in one of the provinces of China, in experiencing Maoist, communist China, and eventually finally escaped and moved to the United States to experience freedom. And I want to say, I think the year was 1986, and raves about the experience and loves America. And she identifies herself as American by choice. She is a wonderful woman who, for many decades, just simply enjoyed the freedoms we have here in America and loved it. But then started to notice some glimmerings, some glimpses of what she had experienced in Maoist China. And at first, I'm going to paraphrase. You really should go and listen to her words and her explain it. But I'll give you the gist of it in my words. She started to see some Marxist, socialist, communist sorts of beliefs and activities taking place in the United States and was shocked. But when they would pop up occasionally here and there, she sort of wrote them off. But it wasn't until COVID, and it was actually in particular a school board meeting that really hit her the wrong way. And so she got active and went in to address a school board where she lives, and that really set things alight for her. It really, the light bulb went on, and she has become an activist ever since. One of those people, and I think we all know them, you're listening to two of them right now, who really strongly advocate for what America is and what it represents and what it could be, warts and all. I'm one of those people, and I think I can probably speak for Skip when I say that America always was, and always will be flawed. There are flaws, and there are blemishes in our history, and we've done some bad things as a country. Overwhelmingly, when you compare America to the other choices, and there's an expression there that I've heard many times, that America as an institution is a terrible system of government, except all the others. It's something like that. Anyway, this G. Van Fleet, and I'll pause to spell her name. Her first name is X-I, that's G, it's pronounced G, Van Fleet, V-A-N space F-L-E-E-T. I've been following her for years and commented, and actually in some of the things I've gotten involved with, I've had some very nice exchanges with her. But she started to see the rise of, I'm just calling it social communism, because as yet, it's the ever-shifting landscape of the Democrat Party makes it impossible to pin them down on any definition of any word, anywhere. They call it democratic socialism and all kinds of stuff. But all it is broken, harmful, damaging, bad policy that's Marxist in nature and they're rolling it out all over the U.S. We see it in Mundani, in New York City. We see it popping up in parts of New Jersey, Texas. It's all over California. These beliefs, and you even see the governor of California openly admiring and flying back and forth and basically skipping along hand in hand with the president of China. So they're not hiding it. The embrace of social communism. But this G. Van Fleet, she has just recently released a book called Mao's America. Mao, as in, if you've heard the expression, Maoism or Maoist in nature. Chairman Mao is one of the most brutal dictators ever to lived. And in this interview, here's what I'll try to do on the social media side, on the podcast side. I'll grab that link. I have it. I'll share that in the comments and notes so that you too can watch it. Share it around because we need to be ringing the alarm bell. We need to be telling kids that, how do I want to put it? It was actually, I'll paraphrase some of the words that, some of the expressions used by the interviewer. He said effectively that if all kids in K through 12 are told, if they're just simply told Hitler is bad, and they don't have any other perspective on history, and they don't know who Stalin was, or Mao, or the Castro family, and they don't have any perspective on real history and what's taken place, the real history of the world, and don't even get me started on lack of history of the United States, there's a dearth of actual understanding of our true history from the colonial days forward. And then there's this brainwashing attached to that. But anyway, relative to this woman, G. Van Fleet, there is a tremendous opportunity for us to step in right now and get as many kids as possible aware of what's really taken place in the world. And candidly, that takes me back to the interview that I did with very good friend Khalid Namar. I hope to have him back on again soon. That's a big part of what he does. Skip, we're coming up on a break. I'll take us into the break, and then I want to get your comments on these things as well when we come back from the break. But Khalid Namar has a whole focus on that. He's been going around K through 12 and college campuses for years and doing Liberty Lounges with Dan Messina, trying to get real information out about our real history. But if kids don't have it, then they don't have perspective, then they will embrace the very things that have led to an estimated 110 million deaths worldwide, and that's communism. We're going to continue this conversation on the other side of the break. Remember, you can join in on the conversation at 440-946-9468. More on the other side of the break. The podcast audience.
So, to the podcast audience, we're not going live over the radio, but we're going to try something a little bit new. I got some feedback yesterday that our breaks were too silent, and that was annoying. And so we'll talk to you, the folks that are streaming to you. By the way, we are streaming live to YouTube. I just checked it. Their channel is up. I'm not sure if it'll post or not. We'll see. But we are live on now YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. And so we're going to be getting in depth on this topic of Maoism, Marxism, communism. It's all pretty much one and the same. And,
Yep.
We think that it's not going to come to this country, but we're starting to see that come to this country. So that's where we're going. We appreciate the folks that are in Rumble. I'm not seeing any chatters on the on either of our other channels, but on the Rumble channel,
I don't have YouTube pulled up yet. I can do that. But I do see, well, it was just my comment. So I have Facebook open as well. I've got Rumble and Facebook up. So if you are tuning in and do have a question, feel free to drop that question in the comments, a question or comment, and we'll see if we can include that as part of today's discussion. But, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I think actually I'm going to take advantage of tech if it cooperates with me. It may not. I've got the link. Actually, it'll take me a minute. I can forward that from my phone, and I will drop the link to this interview with G. Van Fleet. And then, Skip, I'm going to use that on the radio to entice people to come and find us on social media.
30 seconds.
Okay. Let us know if you enjoy our banter, our break time banter, better than the silence. I'm not sure whether you'd prefer to hear us or silence, but let us know.
Word to the wise, if you do switch to music, remember you have to turn the music off again when we go back from break. That I
2 or 3 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and we are talking today about communism, socialism, Marxism, all that stuff. As promised, during the break, I took a moment to pull up the interview. I've got it up now, and I've got the link to the interview with G. Van Fleet. I'm going to drop that into the comments on Rumble and Facebook, and in a moment I'll also open YouTube, where we're now streaming. But that's your cue, listening audience. Go and find us. Good things happen to podcasts like ours when we grow our followers. We need you. That's our call to you. We need the followers. Please like, comment, share, and actually backing up a step, we did actually mention Great Lakes Outdoor Supply yesterday. And dutifully today, I want to pause again to spell out for our listening audience, anybody who may be new to Voice of Geauga. First of all, welcome. And I do hope that you find us on social media and follow. Great Lakes Outdoor Supply, in case you're not aware, is both a follower and supporter of Voice of Geauga, but also a great place to go to find cool stuff. They are loaded with firearms, munitions, bows and arrows. I think they have crossbows. You might even find, heck, they've got so much stuff. There's like canoes probably, and cooking and outdoor, and their great foul weather gear. It's an outdoor oasis of good stuff at Great Lakes Outdoor Supply. They are in Middlefield and a location in Chesterland. So I am going to take a moment now to grab this link, and I will share it on social media. That's where you will find the link and check out this interview. It's a really, really good one. Skip, what are your thoughts on the spread of communism, and how do we nip this in the bud and get back to being America?
Well, I've got a lot to say about this, actually. I used to travel internationally, did business in communist China, in socialist, Marxist Mexico, Brazil, all over Asia. And so I've got firsthand experience with the communists. I actually sat and negotiated with the head of the Communist Party in China, and it's an eye-opening experience. You made a comment that the United States is flawed. I would put it a little differently. We're probably the greatest country on the face of the earth. There is no perfect system. All systems have pros and cons. But if you look at the various systems around the world, the United States has built into it, because of its structure, and we're interfering actually with that structure, self-correction mechanisms. So if we start to get off of track where we're supposed to go, and then we have a mechanism to self-correct. And so from that perspective, we're a great country, because from time to time the pendulum swings, and we tend to swing left, we tend to swing right, but there is a mechanism to try and keep us down the straight and narrow. and that's fantastic. But I want to say a couple of things. First of all, for the listening audience, if you're in Geauga County, there's a Geauga County Commissioner meeting this morning. There was an agenda item that I noticed from yesterday where it looks like the commissioners are going to be adjusting the comment period. Right now, there's 2 comment periods, one in the beginning, one in the end, and people are pretty much given they're given 3 minutes to talk, which is somewhat limiting. But they're as many people can talk as are there and are interested in talking. But it makes me a little nervous they're going to adjust the comment period because we had people show up and comment. Nobody commented until recently, and now people are showing up and commenting, and they don't like it. That's a sign of misbehavior on the part of our elected officials. So people should show up. I can't be there this morning. And in addition to that, Mr. Dvorak sits on the governance committee at NOACA. NOACA wants to get into managing or having guidance over airports. That is not part of their federal charter, and so you might want to comment to him on that. So with that said, let me go back and let's define some terms for a second, because I'm very concerned, upset, whatever. If you ask the average person on the street today, how do you define socialism? You'll get a variety of answers, and many of them not correct. People can't define socialism. I find it really interesting. I have a bunch of friends who came from Europe to come to this country to escape what was going on in Europe, both from Ukraine, from Russia, from Italy, from various parts of the world, and they know firsthand what socialism is because they experienced it. And so, and they have very strong feelings about it, but the average American doesn't even define socialism. They can't define communism. They can't define Marxism. And yet, we're seeing elements of Marxism even within, you know where I'm going to go with this, NOACA. They're connected with a Marxist, literally Marxist, not name-calling, organization called ICLEI, which was part of their climate action plan. So let's define some terms. Socialism. Socialism, in its purest sense, is government control of production, but it's really, in a broader sense, government control. So our Medicare systems, our Medicaid systems, our social security systems are a form of socialism. It's government controlling things. Not good. Government tends to screw everything up because it makes it bigger, more costly, generally speaking. But that's socialism. Just think of government control when you think socialism. It's a tyrant system. Communism is the spreading of wealth from each according to his need to each according to his ability. And so it is a wealth spreading, it's a wealth balancing mechanism. That's what communism was all about. Marxism is the combination of those two and the process to go from capitalism to this what some people think is nirvana, a communist socialist government. So government controls everything, and then they rebalance the wealth, so to speak. NOACA, when I call NOACA names, and I say, oh, they're Marxist, well, I do that with a reason. It's not just name calling. They did a plan back in 2013-14, and that plan was funded. It was called NEOSCC, N-E-O-S-C-C. Go to a website, neoscc.com. I own that website. You'll see a lot of information on there. One of the core tenets of that plan was this statement out of their application for the grant which HUD funded them. The income in northeastern Ohio is not balanced. There's an imbalance in income or wealth, and the purpose of this plan is to rebalance the wealth. Based on the definitions that I just told you, that certainly sounds like a communist approach or ideology. They got the funding to do the plan. They did the plan. Now they have a plan for Lake County, Geauga County, Cuyahoga County, Lorain County, Ashtabula, actually, Youngstown, the whole northeastern Ohio region. And each of those plans, you'll see elements in there that should concern everybody. Geauga County, if you're listening, there is a plan for Geauga County created by NOACA that is, so we see elements of this socialist, communist, Marxist kind of activity going on. There's a I don't know what people are thinking when they think we need a government to go that way, because that's pure tyranny. Marxist, communist countries are tyrannical. They have a dictator, so to speak. It's not a free, open, democratic process. And so you basically have a tyrant, and bad things come from that. I attended a church service in China with some individuals, and I was told I couldn't tell anybody about it. It was a secret church service. It was in somebody's home, and I was not allowed to say anything for fear that the Communist Party would come and scoop everybody up and take them away to their correction facility. So, there's a lot we can talk about this, but there's, look at what's going on in New York City, and I see we're coming up on a break, so I'll flip it over to you shortly here, Jonathan. Look at what's going on in New York City. It basically is going to turn into, what was the name of that movie with Escape from New York? That you've got pure chaos all over the place. I see that coming. Mondami is going to reduce police and increase DEI. And we saw how DEI worked in the Obama and the Biden administration. And thank God we have President Trump in there correcting a lot of that. So that's some things I could say about it. I could go on for hours on this whole topic of communism, socialism, and Marxism, and give you a lot of real life experiences that I had in working around the world in those environments. I always kissed the ground when I came back to the United States, because while we're not perfect, we're much, much, much better than the communist, Marxist, socialist activity that I saw around the world. So anyway,
sanity dictates if you have some issues, you fix the issues. You don't burn everything down and try and start over. And the whole thing is always based upon and built on oppressor versus oppressed. And we have some great comments that I'm going to try to highlight when we come back from the other side of the break. But building on that oppressor versus oppressed, we've seen it play out here before, and I've made the comment, it was actually in specific reference to my conversation with Khalid Namar when he was on. They, conservative black, particularly conservative black men, commonly say that black America is frequently the petri dish of bad ideas or communism, and we've seen it play out in black America. More on the other side of the break.
All right, do you want to continue? I left the mic on for the break for our
Mics are off here.
For our chat audience. So let us know if you like this better, us babbling through the breaks versus.
Well, when you put it that way, it's not very enticing. I don't plan to babble through the break, but we do have 4 minutes here, and to our listening audience on the social media side, your points are well taken. During those breaks, sometimes we're fixing tech issues or adjusting things, or we're planning strategy for the upcoming segment and where we're going to go next. We make sure that if especially if we have a guest, we want to make sure that anything that they want to be sure that gets covered, gets included in our show notes and those sorts of things. So that is a little glimpse into what happens during the breaks. Since you are delightfully among our podcast followers, you get to get a little behind the curtains glimpse. And just to be clear, so that there's no misunderstanding, you're not anybody who might be unclear about what's happening here, we're not actually on air on the radio show right now. So during certain points, at about 15 minutes after the hour, middle of the hour, and about quarter till, the radio station stops for commercial break. And when that happens, one of a few things can happen. Skip and I can just sort of sit and take a few deep breaths and stare blankly and maybe sip coffee or fix tech issues or go over show notes or those sorts of things. And so that's where you are right now. You're in a break with us. Skip, where do you want to go when we come back? I know you've got Rumble pulled up. We've got some really good comments here.
Yeah, we can talk about some of the comments and continue the discussion. I can give some more specifics in terms of things I experienced in communist China and in Mexico. I actually had to pay bribes. My company was strictly opposed to paying any monies that weren't specifically for goods and services. but that stopped us from doing business in Mexico. So I had to get special permission to pay a bribe. It was, that's socialist government for you. Well, actually, tyranny. I don't know if that's even
We
socialism, Marxism, but
we had that 25 years ago here in the U.S. Just simply going to trade shows. I traveled around and I did, well, they're not trade shows, they're education summits. So I went around and did education for treasurers and endowments, foundations. I did a lot with what's called TEGE, the Tax Exempt Governmental Entities group within the IRS. So IRS had outreach and education training, and I did joint sessions with them. But we would travel with all this stuff, and it would get shipped ahead of us and show up at these big convention centers. And the unions, that the only people who were allowed to touch it and load it off of the truck and then take it to where your booth was in the big convention center, oftentimes they would just sit on it until the last minute. Or just, if they thought they didn't like you, the trade show would be starting and they wouldn't have delivered it. So people figured out a long time ago, if you just go and find the union guys and give them $100, then lo and behold, your stuff would get unpacked off of the bus.
Hey, Thomas,
So,
were you trying to break in there?
Yeah, you guys got 10 seconds till you're back.
Okay, I'll turn the screen on.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and today we're talking about socialism, communism, Marxism, what it looks like, how to define it, where to find it, and where to weed it out, and how, most importantly, to highlight it for today's young generation. Feel free to join the conversation at 440-946-9468. We've got a lot of great comments here. Let's see, just scrolling back up, we've got Gardens of CH points out that current government schools are not going to teach the ills of communism. And you are spot on. We get into how to make correction in schools. It's something that's near and dear to me. There are all sorts of problems with our government-run schools. Some people refer to it as the education industrial complex. It's broken, and it's not educating our children, and certainly not teaching proper history. If kids knew history, then we would be in a very different trajectory as a country right now. Let's see, there's a great comment from Tiff Abroad. Only a true relationship to reality can cure it, in my opinion. Working for money, personal responsibility, actually building something, true independence. Schools no longer prioritize these things. And I do want to point out that I have shared a couple of links on all three different platforms where we're streaming. On Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube, you'll find both a link to the G. Van Fleet interview that I've been talking about that led into this conversation, but also I've included a link to something that you and children in and around your family should be aware of. And that is a site called victimsofcommunism.org. That's victimsofcommunism.org. You can type that in, or if you're on social media, just click the link that I put in the notes, in the comments, and check that out. We need to be getting the word out, and we need to fill in where our K through 12, and certainly, absolutely, college system is a dismal failure, and that is teaching true history. All of it needs to be taught, and right now, I've made the comment for years that kids are only being exposed to about 5% of history. And overwhelmingly, typically, just like social media, it's all the negative. Whatever sort of negative you can pull out to make somebody look bad or antagonize somebody, that seems to be the prevailing approach to what we're calling education. All the unifying stuff, like what's the Robert Woodson Foundation? They have an education curriculum. Robert Woodson is amazing. They've got I think it's called Liberty 1776 or something along that line. I'll find that one too and put it in the notes. But there are curriculum out there and great resources. Tuttle Twins is another one, and Prager University with these little video shorts. We have to be doing a better job of countering, because what the kids are getting a huge earful of is social communism. It's Marxism agenda being pushed huge in K through 12 from many of what we call celebrities and on the supposed news. So all these different sources and resources have scaled back what they could be doing, what they should be doing. They're not talking about true history and are pushing Marxist ideologies. That's how we push back and win.
Hey, Jonathan, let's talk about a couple of real life in the United States socialist, Marxist, communist kinds of, and we're seeing a lot of that. We see Madami is actually direct, but more indirect concepts that get pushed, and people have just accepted. They become part of our lexicon. And so years ago, back in the 60s, there was a program created by the United Nations called Agenda 21. Everybody considered that a conspiracy, but you can go look that up. It's on the United Nations website. And in there, the core premise of that is a redistribution of wealth. That's a communist idea. And also socialist, because it's a government control of things. So government needs to spread the wealth around the world. Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, stood on the House floor in Congress, and a number of other congressional leaders also, and talked about how great this was. This program, basically, this is not the way they put it, the way that they phrased it was, oh, we're going to make the world better, we're going to help people. That's what Democrats do. They're really good at rephrasing socialist, Marxist terms and making it sound like it's something you want to do. DEI is a great example of that. But what came out of that effort was the climate action. Is actually climate change. It was global warming, then global cooling, then climate action, because none of those things played out. But the climate change movement, which they use to divide people, so there's people who believe in it, people don't believe in it, but it's a tool for division and a tool to spread wealth. When you look at the heart of the climate action plan, and you can look at the heart of that was created by NOACA in Cleveland City actually created a climate action plan. The heart of that is taking money away from people, spreading it around to do things, and that's a communist, Marxist, socialist kind of an idea. So we see that it's part of our society. People kind of accept it, and they.
But Skip, we have to pause right there and point out the fact that it's ludicrously, insanely absent. That's what's sold, but it never actually works. And right before we went to the break, I brought up that comment that Black America has been the petri dish of bad communist ideas for decades. Well, connected to the civil rights movement in the 1960s, Black America, and overwhelmingly all the white Americans who believed in the abolishment of slavery and equality and all those things that marched side by side, thought that what we were getting was going to be equality. Let's look financially at what has happened to Black America since then. It's ruinous. And especially Black America, were sold this notion that Black America was oppressed, and as soon as government comes in and controls more money, they were going to equalize, and then life would be fair. Life is it is catastrophically less fair right now in Black America. It is harm rather than good. That's the point that you need to focus on. So when government comes along and says, oh, there's this oppressed class of people, we need to collect trillions of dollars and then grow government. And when we grow government programs, then there'll be fairness at the end. It never happens. The only thing that comes of it, and the actual redistribution of wealth, is into politicians' pockets. That is the common enemy. Black, white, religious, non-religious, Asian, Middle Eastern, it doesn't matter. Government all over the world has operated that way since the beginning of time and before our country formed itself. You can hear stories about the Romans in those that taxed, keeping and skimming and making life miserable on people. Government never comes along and actually helps. And it's Ronald Reagan's expression that the 9 scariest words in the English language are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." So I just wanted to pause, Skip, and point out there is no actual redistribution of wealth, and anybody who thinks that Bernie Sanders, now a billionaire or whatever he is, hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's never worked, or AOC or any of those people actually mean what they say, or Mandani. It's madness. And the reason that people can believe that is because they don't know history.
Well, they do redistribute wealth. I mean, Geauga County pays $10 million into the federal tax system for the 18.4 cents a gallon gas tax, and it all goes to elsewhere across the country and into Cleveland. We get nothing back. That's redistributing our wealth into Cleveland and so forth. So the government is pretty good at redistributing wealth for their own benefit, by the way. They do that, and then they tout themselves as doing great things, and then, why is it that people can go into Congress and become millionaires? Look at the lady up in the Muslim lady up in Minneapolis who became a multimillionaire, and you're trying to figure out where that came from. And so, that's the problem we've got. First of all, Marxist socialists, the Castro, Mao, Stalin, all used the device of division. They created separate groups. They pitted those two groups against each other. That's how they overthrew the governments that they happened to have been in. They're very successful, Marxists, at creating divisive language. The Democrats, as much as I hate to say this, are pretty good at that. So we've got, as you said, we've got to drop the divisive language and start realizing we have one common problem: a government, and that's human nature, that wants to generally gain control over time, and then which includes control of our money. If we realize that and keep our government in order and support pure capitalism, not this crony capitalism that we currently have, then we're going to be much better off. But we have to wake up. That's the reason for this program, is to talk about things like this so people can get educated and start watching out for things and keeping our congressmen and our senators and others in line, and paying attention to what they're doing. It even comes down to the county commissioner level or the trustee level. They all want to use our money to make themselves look good so that they can get reelected or have some other personal gain. And that's just human nature, and so we just have to be aware of that and be on guard against that. But
it sounds like you may be referring back to the ice cream photo ops that I mentioned yesterday. We're coming up on a break. I do want to point out that Gardens of CH says that Geauga residents think communism is not in our rural, lovely county. If you want to see communism in action, in my book, you can go at 9:30 today and listen in as the Geauga County Commissioners meet to decide to silence the people. I'm told that they're meeting today because they're frustrated that people have been actually showing up, heaven forbid, gasp, and making public comments at the commissioners' meetings. They want to turn that off. More on the other side of the break.
Mics are off here.
All right. So Skip, you're experimenting with just leaving the podcast mics up.
I didn't turn the mic off. I'm watching also the timing on the various channels and which ones turn quicker. So YouTube.
Yeah, what sort of delay?
Facebook was first, YouTube was second, and now Rumble is 60 seconds. There you go. About 60-second delay.
Okay. Well, I said before the show started, I'm not sure that people who are watching on Rumble will really care. I don't know that they'll know or care that there's a little bit of a delay in what they're seeing. Speaking of which, if you are watching, so I'm looking at Rumble, looks like we've got a couple of thumbs up. Thank you for that. That helps. If you're watching on one of these platforms, don't forget to give that thumbs up. And on some of them, I think there's like a little, bell. You can, so next to Voice of Geauga, on probably all the different social media platforms, don't forget to click that little bell. It sends a reminder and lets you know when we go live. We are excited to have you guys join us. And you know what frequently happens? You're part of the show. This is Voice of Geauga. This isn't just Skip and Jonathan. It's you. It's we the people. If you see something, you're concerned about something, you want
30 seconds, about 30 seconds.
if you want to interject, post the comments here. I can't promise that we're always going to catch them, but we do try to catch the comments and include those in the show so that we can be sharing information. It's more eyes. What is the expression? Many hands make light work. We can team up.
Guys, 10 seconds.
And this goes out. This break stuff goes over the air, by the way, when people replay this program. So.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga. We're talking today about socialism, communism, Marxism, all the bad stuff, all the terrible isms, and where we're seeing them creeping into society. And ultimately, underneath all of it, and where we have to have our primary focus is on childhood education. We've known for decades, and unfortunately, too many people got lured by the promise of money and wealth. They got bought out, they sold out, and they gave up on our education system. That at no point in American history, I don't believe, was that more apparent than during COVID, when you had kids who were relegated to their homes and opened up laptop screens, and suddenly parents were peering over the shoulders of children and seeing what was being taught, quote unquote. The content is horrific in many regards. So parents all across the nation woke up. And I'm going to put, I can't help myself. I've too many years involved in the fight for K through 12 education. I have to point something out that may not be obvious to all people. Many people left government-run schools and found alternatives, mostly homeschool. So people would form pods, they would team up with family, they would get grandparents involved, whatever it took to try and find education during the COVID years. Bear with me a second, this factors into history and fighting communism. But the first step is the source of education. Well, many kids of all races, colors, creeds, skin tone, religion, many kids left government schools in droves during COVID and flipped to home education. And what we're seeing as a result is the academic scores are in. And let me spell it out for you in case you're in our listening audience and care about important things like systemic racism, because we've been hearing a lot about that. And you know what COVID taught us? Where to find systemic racism. In my book, it's unequivocal. You cannot argue it. The kids who left government schools did better. White kids did better. Asian kids, maybe a little bit less of an improvement. Hispanic, Middle Eastern, marked improvement in academic proficiency scores and standards. Black Americans, little boys and girls that are black in America, saw meteoric, astronomical growth in their academic proficiency scores once they left the education industrial complex. To me, I've been beating that drum and ringing that bell for years since those numbers started coming out. By the way, there is hope for America, and it's very arguable that the great hope for America is in Black America right now, because Black America saw the largest increase, 16.7% compared to about 7% on average for other ethnicities. Black Americans left government schools in massive numbers during COVID. And I hope, I have to my core, not only just education, but I truly hope that Americans in general, and in particular Black Americans, find their way to better education and an actual understanding of history. Many are turning conservative and realizing they've been lied to, twisted, race-baited, and manipulated for generations, and they're angry. Those, frankly, are some of my best friends right now, the people that I align with ideologically, and we're beating that drum to get more good education and proper historical perspective and end the race baiting. But back to social communism, it all ties in because that was a big pitch to Black America in the 1960s, was all this communist Marxist ideology. Well, it's come to roost, and I think we can turn that around with better education.
Well, the formation of family planning, Margaret Sanger, was all based in a Marxist idea. And so, my big question right now is, or a comment and a question. First of all, education started going sideways when we had a federal Department of Education. When we removed education from our local communities and started creating policy and from above, that's government. Government's creating policy. You have to educate on this, educate on that. And then, so now you wreck all of the schools. You might have some bad schools if it's done locally, but generally speaking, you get better outcomes if you have local control over what's being taught and so forth. But the big question I have is, we've gone so far down this path for so many decades. How do we correct it, and how do we educate the educators? So people that teach our kids have to be themselves educated on history, and math is pretty straightforward. I think, I hope, and English, and core subjects. But topics like history and society and all that kind of stuff, it's gotten so distorted with the goofiness of some parts. What was it, the 1619 project or whatever that was called, came out and completely distorted the reality of history and how this country was founded and what the reasons were and all that kind of stuff. Completely distorted where slavery came from. And by the way, slavery has been a part of human culture since the beginning of time, and still exists, by the way. So it's a topic that people distort and misteach for their own benefit. And so we have teachers with an ideological bent that try to teach our kids, and that's a problem. But I'm not sure who teaches the teachers, who oversees the teachers, and making sure that what's being taught in our classrooms is appropriate and correct and accurate. It's a problem. And we have people who have basically tried to change history. And so if you go to the people who write the history books, there are companies out there that intentionally are changing history. What is the old saying? History is to those who win the battle and get to write history. And so,
and plenty want to rewrite history. Skip, do you mind if I interject a couple of things?
No. Yeah, go ahead. Or no, I don't want you to.
A few things that are very important for Ohio citizens to know. Write this down and remember it. ORC 3313.60. That's Ohio Revised Code 3313.60. It pertains to our rights, your rights as citizens, as parents of children in the education system. The first thing to know is that it is a legal requirement that anything taught in Ohio schools must be true and factual. However, Skip mentioned something called the 1619 Project. That was written by a woman by the name of Nicole Hannah Jones. Nicole Hannah Jones was confronted on the fallacies and fictions that she wove into her storyline for the 1619 Project by a world-famous, very recognized historian in an interview. The two of them sat down, and Nicole Hannah Jones is on recording admitting that she didn't write 1619 Project to be historically accurate. She wrote it to be a narrative. A narrative is another word for historically inaccurate, and in my book, not true. What she has done is taken selective little pieces and woven it into a storyline to create race baiting. Race baiting sells, there's big money behind it. Another person of the same era and same ilk is Ibrahim X. Kendi. Both of them made huge money and huge strides virtually overnight. They came from almost nowhere and were made these sensations all across America and got rich off of race baiting. These are the types of things that are flashpoints, and they are pumped into Ohio schools. You look at primarily black schools, and I know a lot of them, I'm looking at you, Richmond Heights, that do a lot to very specifically target, isolate, and torment black students. And they are teaching them that they are victims, that all white people are bad, and all this stuff, these narratives and things like Nicole Hannah Jones, they they rob children of their agency, and happening, and it is all baked into. Have run out of time. I think maybe we'll do another segment. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.